So what's great about this opening shot is there was a time where I just decided to type in 35mm into YouTube, and I found all these great scans of 35mm rolls that would play in movie theaters, like as commercials. And so this Epcot Center thing was one of those. They literally made a 35mm movie theater ad for Epcot, and so I had never seen that shot be used in any other like theme park related video, so I decided to put it into mine. I did a live screening of this movie, and everyone laughed when they saw that title pop up, because I think everyone thought it was a joke, because kind of all of the other things that were playing at the screening were kind of jokey short films. And so when that came up on the screen, everyone laughed, and I don't think everyone was ready for the rest of the movie that was coming. I love this scrapped version of the Horizon theme song that plays. I knew it had to be featured at some point, so I felt like it would be a good place to put it right here. So originally, the way that I introed the film was I had this 5-minute summarized version of Horizons where I basically walked the audience through the entire layout of the ride and the story beat for beat in like a rushed 5-minute version. And I just felt like it just took too long to get to the meat and the potatoes, which was, you know, Hoot and Chief and what they were doing. So that grid thing that you just saw there was what ended up becoming of the ride intro segment. I visited Epcot for the first time after making this documentary. I want to say about a year. Yeah, about a year after I had made the documentary, and it felt really weird standing in that space where Dave was out in the grass in front of Horizons. Which, spoilers, I'm sure you probably all have already seen this movie if you're watching this commentary, but Horizons got taken over by Mission Space. If you want to go see where those exterior shots were taken, just go to Mission Space. All the grass is still there. Something that I knew from the beginning that I really wanted to do was that I really wanted to use as much of the Horizons score to score the movie as much as I could. And so I went through, I mean, if you look online, there's compilations of the Horizons music of the entire score, and there's over an hour worth. So I had over an hour worth of music to pick from to score this 25-minute short documentary. So that was pretty fun to go through and select emotionally which beat I wanted to hit based off of which Horizon song I could pick from. So the reason why I picked the name Remain Seated Please for the title of the documentary, even though the ride announcer very clearly says please remain seated, is just because I felt like Remain Seated Please was more well known of a phrase, because that's the phrase that's used on Matterhorn. That's what they put at the beginning of the No Doubt album. So I picked that title instead, also because whenever I looked online, I didn't see anything. When I would like type into YouTube, please remain seated please, I didn't see anything that came up. So I picked Remain Seated Please because roll off the tongue better. Something else that I want to point out too about what made editing this so hard is the fact that here you have all of this footage shot by these two guys whose last intention was to try to film a documentary. I mean, like, when you look at the footage, they're not trying to get good shots. None of the shots are stable. They don't stand still really for that long, and rarely any of the shots. It was really hard to go through and pick the most cohesive shots and then try to edit it all together to give the clearest picture of the ride. And another thing, to kind of go back to what I was talking about why I decided to go right into telling Hoot and Chief's story and didn't really give an intro of the ride Horizons, is because I remember getting a note from a friend that said we should just discover the ride through Hoot and Chief. And so that's why, instead of giving a like POV ride through of the ride before going into the Hoot and Chief stuff, if you had never ridden Horizons before, this is basically how you're getting it fed to you, is just by watching them go through. As a documentarian, I can't stress to you how amazing it was that they filmed all of these times that they waited for the gap and them talking about the gap and demonstrating the gap. Because when I was writing out the, let's say, script for this documentary, which was literally just me taking all of their writings from their blogs and then trying to piece together the story from there, I heard them talk about the gap so many times that I was really worried that that would be something that the audience would wonder, since, you know, it would otherwise be unclear how it was that they were able to not get caught. And the only way to explain that is by showing the gap. And so it was really nice that they had all this footage of them waiting for the gap, which I don't even know why they filmed this. It doesn't even make sense that they filmed this part of it, except just for themselves, I guess. I don't know how you guys felt watching this for the first time, but when I first went through the footage, I was literally on the edge of my seat whenever moments like that would happen, because I genuinely didn't know if they ever got caught or not. Also, fun fact, Dave, aka Hoot, told me that that guy Bionic Fonzie now works at Disney. I don't know what it is that he does, I just know that he works at Disney now. Love this shot because it's one of the very rare times that they will really hold on shots of them in the set walking around. I also liked playing that shot just straight and just having the atmospheric music playing. Also, shots like this were really important to me because it was one of the only times that you very clearly see them get in and get out of the ride vehicles. Like, you literally watch them go from being on the set to jumping into the very clearly moving ride vehicle. I actually got a comment from somebody that told me to take out all of the cuss words out of the movie, and that made me feel gross, the idea of doing that, because to me that is part of who Hoot and Chief were, you know. They weren't goody two shoes guys, you know. Here are these two guys swearing like sailors and breaking rules and kind of laws from what they're doing. You know, it just didn't feel right to downplay that. So I left in all the swear words and everything. They didn't have all of the video clips that they posted on YouTube, which is where I grabbed all the footage for this. They never put dates on them about when they were filmed, so it wasn't like I was able to sequentially put all the clips into order. And so what I would do is I would watch the clips and see that, you know, Hoot almost fell and hurt himself. And then I would find a later clip that I originally thought came before the fall, where in that clip, Chief right there would mention, like, is that where you fell? And then that was the way that I knew that that was a clip that happened after he fell. So I would basically have to use context clues while watching all of these clips to figure out what order the story went in. I feel like in movies there are kind of moments where you kind of wake the audience back up. Like if anyone's falling asleep in the middle of a movie, you kind of throw something at them that kind of re-grabs their attention again. And this definitely was a moment for me that I knew had to go in somewhere in the middle of the movie. It's also just kind of scary seeing this like disfigured, naked animatronic figurine. And it's a weird implication to think that Disney Imagineers made that and just thought, oh, this is fine. This was a really hard part to cut because I didn't know how to not make this so jarring, this cut to this insane Test Track commercial, because I really couldn't find any other good Test Track like old footage, you know? Like that was really kind of one of the only ads that I could see. Also, this scene was so hard to work with the audio because, you know, it's camcorder footage and it's someone yelling from afar and someone talking up close. And so that was hard to balance out. Also, this Test Track special is horrible. I liked having that in the middle because I kind of needed like a ticking time bomb aspect of the story to remind the audience that, you know, the stuff that they're doing is going to come to an end at some point, and it kind of leaves you on the edge of your seat. I like having that kind of stuff in movies so that audiences don't get too relaxed. Also, I love that shot of Chief posing with the lady. So funny. Also, it's so creepy seeing the animatronics from this perspective. But there is something admirable about Disney making the effort to make those animatronic faces move and be somewhat realistic, even though you wouldn't really see them unless you stepped off the ride. And that's something that is very true about a lot of the ride. There are a lot of great details in here that Hoot and Chief exposed that you would have never noticed if you're on the ride. As stupid as that shot of him humping the little statue thing is, I felt like it was really important to have parts like that to kind of show some personality with Hoot and Chief. A funny thing about this whole factoid with Hoot and Sunnyside is that I was worried that Sunnyside might have died. And the reason why is because when I can't remember what it was, I looked, it was either on their blog or maybe it was on his Facebook, but I saw some mention of, because I didn't know Hoot's actual wife's name, I saw some mention that she had gotten breast cancer a couple of years ago around the time that Chief had died. And then there were no updates past that. And so I didn't know whether to put in that little anecdote of they've been happily married ever since, because I didn't know if she had died or not. But thankfully, as of the time of recording this, she is still with us. This part was insanely hard to cut together, and after trying for so long to cut it together to make it in any way suspenseful, I just decided that I had to put some sort of animation into the movie. And so the animation is inspired by, if you've been on mesaverdetimes.com, if you've been on the Hoot and Chief's blog, they told this story and another story through comics that Dave drew or Hoot drew. And so we literally took his drawings and then we just did flash animation to them. And that's how we created these animated sections. The guy who did the animation is my buddy Tyler Novak. He also did the voice of Chief. He put me in the background. That's me wearing a baseball cap, my Epcot sweatshirt, and my glasses, and my hair fraying out on the sides. And Hoot is played by my buddy Chris Russo, who Dave was cracking up about how good he was at doing his voice. The reason why I picked Tyler, my friend, to be Chief is because when I first played the footage, when I first played the kind of like first cut of this documentary to my friends, I can't remember who it was, but one of them started laughing in the middle of the screening, and I paused it and I asked what was so funny, and he said Chief sounds exactly like Tyler. And so when I wanted to do the animation, I just asked him, hey, do you want to play Chief? Really awesome that they showed stuff like this too, because they definitely talked about how they got crazier and crazier with their escapades, especially with the whole staying in the ride for extended periods of time. And so it was really nice that they showed their hiding spaces to kind of demonstrate that. Because the last thing that you want in a documentary is just having the film tell you what happened. So it's really great to have more proof of the stuff that they did. And the fact that they could just walk past the cast members and smile and wave after staying in the ride for 7 hours is hilarious to me. Also, I love little moments like this, because moments like this really show the brotherhood between Dave and Ed. And moments like that were really important to me because I needed to make sure that people not only thought, you know, what they did was crazy, but to also fall in love with the idea of the two of them as friends. Hoot, as a gift for making this documentary, gave me a bunch of stuff from Horizons, and that bag is now under my ownership, the one that was on Chief's back in that shot. I wear that bag to Disney all the time. Hoot gave it to me, and when he gave it to me, he told me, you better fucking wear that. And so I said, okay. So weird that Disney can make these amazing technological feats, and then, as you see right there, they just literally attached a paintbrush to catch grease. This is one of the scenes that I'm most proud of, because when I first watched this, once again, like I said before, I was so on the edge of my seat watching this, thinking they have to get caught. They're probably going to get caught. Because this is beyond just walking around on the ride. I mean, this is going into the actual cast member, like, break room areas and whatnot. And so I tried to do a lot of clever little cuts here and there to kind of make it feel like a horror movie almost. And it's also one of the rare times in the movie where you hear no music from the ride, and there's no score, which I did intentionally because I also felt like that added to the discomfort of the scene. It's also so funny that these cast members just never said anything to Hoot and Chief ever. Oh yeah, this shot right here, I had to rearrange the audio because for some reason Hoot's like original scan on YouTube, the audio was so desynced, and so I had to watch his lips to resync the audio, which he was super stoked about because for 10 years he never knew how to resync the audio. So after 10 years, Dave was finally able to watch that clip again with the audio properly working. Also, to everyone on YouTube that posts ambiance from theme parks, Hoot Gibson was a pioneer. And by the way, he would actually like leave the camera for like 30 minutes. There are like 30-minute clips on Dave's YouTube channel. I went to a convention called Midsummer Scream, and they had these guys called the Scent Pros. My friends told me about. They said that it was their favorite booth from last year, and so we went to the booth, and it was these guys that literally made scents. And they, as it turns out, they were scent producers for many of Disney's theme parks around the world and attractions. And we got to talking to one of the guys, and the guy, someone asked, "Do you have the orange scent from Soarin' Over California?" And he said, I've got that scent right here. And he pulled it out, this little baggie, and then he goes, "Fun fact for all of you Epcot fans, in the old ride Horizons, they had a scent machine where they would blast out an orange scent, and so we found basically that company, Scent Pros, that made the orange scent for Soarin' Over California. They found the original recipe for the orange scent for Horizons, and they literally recreated it. So if you've ever been on Soarin' Over California and smelled the orange smell on that ride, you smelled the exact same orange smell that used to be on Horizons." And one of my friends said, "Hey," and pointed to me and said, "This is the guy that made the documentary about Horizons." And he gave me a free bag of the orange scent. It's cool. It was like this little bag of beads that you would set behind a fan, weirdly enough, instead of in front of the fan. And sure enough, it would blast the Soarin'/Horizons orange scent into your room or your car. All of these narration things we just recorded in my friend Tyler's closet on my phone. All of these lines of dialogue are all from Dave's comic. These are all shots from Dave's comic that we flash animated. This part got a great reaction when we did a live screening of it. People were actually gasping at the fact that people noticed the camera. I think people really didn't want Hoot and Chief to get caught. Yeah, this is like the only part of the movie that I didn't put any of the Horizons music. I tried to put a little bit of suspenseful music that I grabbed from I just literally put Kevin MacLeod music under this part. If there's one thing I've learned from becoming friends with Hoot is that Hoot never lies about anything, and he never over exaggerates anything. He'll just tell the straight truth about stuff. Because when you do stuff as crazy as this, you really don't need to stretch the truth at all. I sort of created like a false climax for the movie by combining together one crazy story of them almost getting caught, and then this footage of them setting up the camera, and then later on people seeing the camera, which they never talked about on the blog. But when I watched through the footage, I just at some point saw that, those people were pointing at the camera and talking about it, and so I bumped up the audio and put subtitles to it and decided to add it in as like an extra, oh shit, they're in trouble. Every single theme park person on YouTube loves to pick themselves to be their own voice for their own videos, and I actually did that for like the first couple of cuts of this movie, and I think I just hate my voice too much to have gone through with it, so I picked my friend Lance, and yeah, he did great. And then this right here is my favorite scene in the entire movie. I just loved this music that I pulled for it. This is music that plays when you walk out of the exit. There's a giant loop that plays in like the area where you exit the ride from. And this starts playing at some point. So when I found this and listened to it, I just thought it was so bittersweet, and so it felt really appropriate to put in here. It's also really poetic that the last time that they rode, they just decided to ride it the way it was intended, and the music flows perfectly into this next part. Because the story of Hoot and Chief is also the story of Horizons, and so it can't be told without also showing the demolition of Horizons, because that's what's so important about what Hoot and Chief did. I mean, it's pretty symbolic that Disney literally blew up the Horizons building to announce the demolition. I mean, like, that's nuts. To literally show Mickey hopping and skipping up the stairs and then blowing up a bunch of rockets on the building. It really shows that what Hoot and Chief did was so important, because Disney really didn't document anything that came from Horizons. And really the only way of learning about what that ride was is through the work of fans and super fans like Hoot and Chief. And of course, what good would a theme park video be on YouTube if it didn't talk about Michael Eisner at some point? The last post on Mesa Verde Times was Dave announcing that Chief had died. And now if you go on that website, the latest post is a link to this documentary, which I think is pretty cool and poetic. That's one of my favorite photos of Dave and Ed, is them posing next to Disney security. This part was really important to me, to find all of the footage that correlates to the things that they pulled out of Chief's bag, like finding that shot of them filming the back of the projection screen for the girl, or finding where all of the fruits and vegetables and plants were in the ride. Because it's not like there's some guide to the ride Horizons where they tell you, oh yeah, the purple eggs were in this part of the ride. So I had to go rewatch all of their videos to try to find where each thing was located in the ride. I think Dave still has those fruits and veggies, but I know that pineapple in the bag is the one that he gave me. But you know what's sad is that the leaves fell off at some point and broke off, so the ones that he gave me didn't have the leaves on top. Oh, sorry, those are the ones that he gave me, were the little ones. Yeah, that girl's reaction to the fruit and vegetables was my reaction too, whenever Dave gave them to me. I literally was watching this shot, was going through and watching all the shots, and then he just randomly pans down whoever it is that's filming to get the eggs, and I literally sat up in my chair, like, after looking for an hour, I finally found where the freaking eggs were. Because otherwise I feel like this part would be really boring if you didn't know where it was in the ride. Like if they were just going, hey, look at all these eggs. And fruits and vegetables, you know, so I had to find where they actually were in the ride and show that. And something I want to acknowledge too is that Dave and Ed didn't just like rip these things off of the ride. These are things that they would find that would, because a lot of these things were hot glued to sets, and so over the years the hot glue would deteriorate, and then these little props would rot off and fall off and then be swept away into gutters, and then maintenance workers would sweep them up and throw them away. So these are things that would have been thrown away anyways. It wasn't like they swiped them from the sets. I'm not even saying this to be nice or to be dramatic or anything like that, just to tell you the truth. Like, the first 10 times that I would rewatch through my early cuts of the movie and we get to this part, every time that Dave would say, I didn't think I would get so shook up about it, I would start to just break down in tears. Also, to the 3 people that commented that he threw his best friend away in the trash, you're all idiots. He literally walks over to the bushes, empties it out, and then comes back to the trash can, as I clearly showed right there. I learned a really important lesson at the end of making this movie, and that is that there comes a time when you just got to say to yourself that the movie that you have made is done and ready to be seen, and that there really isn't any further perfecting or working on it. And that was thanks to my friends who told me at the last meeting that I ever took the movie to for notes from them, when they told me that the movie was done and if I tried to bring it next week to show them, that they would not watch it. So that was a really nice thing to hear from them when they told me that, hey, the movie's done.